Hey there guys, welcome back to the Mono JavaScript Crash course, lesson 17. In the next few lessons we're going to be learning about all the different ways we can loop in JavaScript, and we'll start things off by looking at the for loop. As always guys, before we get started, if you like the content, show your support by hitting that like button, and if you guys are new here and like to learn about web development and design, make sure to hit that subscribe button and choose all notifications so you never miss an update. Alright guys, so before we learn about the for loop, let's just go over what loops are in general in JavaScript. So loops in JavaScript are used to perform repeated tasks based on a condition. So a loop will continue to iterate until a specified condition, commonly known as a stopping condition, is met. Now iterate here is just a generic term that means to repeat in the context of loops. So to put that in a visual perspective, I'm just going to go underneath this comment here and I'm just going to log a string into the console. So I will just say I love JavaScript, and you can see here now it logs into the console. Now if I wanted to show this message 5 times, we can either write it out 5 times manually like this, so I'm just going to duplicate it 4 more times, which essentially gives me what I want. However, this is really unpractical and looks pretty bad, so what we can do here is just simply use a loop. So the first loop we're going to be taking a look at is of course the for loop. So I'm just going to comment out all of these and go underneath the for loop comment. Now the syntax of a for loop looks a little something like this. So first we have the for keyword, followed by brackets, and then inside the brackets we first have our initialization. This is followed by our condition, and then this is followed by our final expression, and then finally we have our curly braces, and inside the curly braces we have our statement. So just to go over the syntax again, we first have the for keyword, and the first part of our for loop here is the initialization, and this is the first piece of the puzzle, and what this does is just run before the first execution on the loop. And what the initializer essentially is just a variable that's set to a value. Now the second piece here is the condition, and this expression is what's checked prior to the execution of every iteration. So if this evaluates the true, the loop statement is executed and will keep looping until this condition evaluates the false, in which case the loop stops. And then the last piece of the puzzle here is the final expression, and this expression runs after every iteration. So every time the condition runs true, this gets triggered, and this is usually used to increment a counter, but it can be used to decrement a counter too. And then the statement of course is just the code to be repeated in that loop. So let's turn this example of our 5 messages here saying I love JavaScript and put it inside this for loop. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize a variable. So the variable we're going to create is, let's say let I, and this is going to equal 1. So the I that you see here in this variable is a bit of a convention and is meant to represent index, so it's a bit easier to understand what's going on, but you can actually name this variable anything you want. So after the variable we want to set our condition. So the condition is going to be is I less than or equal to 5. And then lastly we want to include our final expression, which can either be an incrementer or a decrementer. In this case it's going to be an incrementer, so we're going to say I plus plus, so increments by 1 each time. So, and then of course for our statement here we just want to insert the message or the string here of I love JavaScript. So I'm just going to copy that and then we're going to paste it in here. But before I do that, what should happen when I paste this in here is that we should get I love JavaScript output in the console. So we'll just paste that in there, and as you can see in the console now we get I love JavaScript, and you can see here that it's been looped 5 times. And just to print it out 5 times like we did for this example, we're just going to use template strings here. So we're going to grab the variable of I and a colon, and we're just going to say I love JavaScript. And again, as you can see, it's been outputted 5 times. And again guys, you can see how using the for loop we've managed to create the exact same scenario as we did in this example, but this way you can clearly see it's much more efficient, practical, and just looks a lot cleaner. So just to show you guys how this works behind the scenes, I'm just going to paste a simple table in a comment format. So in this format you can see we have our iteration, our variable, our condition, and the action. So our first iteration here, I is equal to 1. Is 1 less than or equal to 5? Yes, it's true, so this gets printed out, and then the I is increased to 2. Our second iteration, same thing, this meets our condition, so it's true. This increases to 3. Third iteration, again this is true, gets increased to 4. 4 gets increased to 5 because again this is true. And then for 5, it is equal to 5. So again, this loop is also true. So it prints out our last action here. Then the I gets increased to 6. Now for the 6th iteration, you can see that 6 is not less or equal to 5. So this is false. So in the end, our loop gets terminated. And that's how the for loop in this example is working behind the scenes. And this is actually the main usage of a for loop, because for loops are preferred over other loops when the programmer knows the exact number of times the loop is going to run, which in this case is going to be 5. So that's the for loop in action, guys. A pretty simple example. We can actually achieve a lot more with loops, but I just wanted to keep this basic for you guys. So that's going to conclude the video, guys. If you like the content, please hit the like button. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.